Thank you for watching, liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing right now.
Hey everyone. Thank you for that kind introduction. It's so exciting to be here. I've never been in Seattle before and never been in Gnome Next before, but it's an amazing scene so far, so I'm thrilled to be here. So I'm talking about the blogosphere today. I think that a lot of people who've been blogging for a long time and people who've been reading blogs for a long time have noticed there's some angst growing in the blogosphere. And because, I started blogging relatively late in 2006 or so for Business Week and now have my own blog and also blog for Yahoo Finance, but I in no way purport to be the blogosphere leader or even an A-list blogger or whatever that is. So I don't have the answers. So I'm going to wander around the audience and I'm going to talk about what I see as some of the problems and some of the potential solutions. And I want you guys to weigh in, just like commenters would do on a blog. So there's going to be no ending Q&A. What? Are we link baiting already? So just, we want to keep this somewhat ordered. So just raise your hand or physically grab me as I walk past you if you have something to add. And we'll have no Q&A session at the end. Who's that for? That's for losers. We're Gnome Decks. We are tapping into the tech conversation literally as I walk around. So to start out, I want to explain a little bit what I mean by angst in the blogosphere. In the recent months, we've had several people that I deem some of my real, shining lights in the blogosphere, if you will, that have recently come out and either stopped blogging or blogging less or have expressed some concerns with it. And one of them is right here in the front row, Mr. Robert Scoble. Robert did a great post a couple weeks ago talking about the influence of PR in the blogosphere. And this really spoke to me because I used to be a staff reporter for Business Week. And I used to always go into PR firms and kind of, answer their questions about how to pitch the media and talk to them about what kind of stories Business Week wanted. And in 2005, 2006, every time I would do this, someone would look at me with eyes full of terror and say, what should we do about blogs? We don't know what to do about blogs. They're writing whatever they want. They're not coming to us. They're not playing by the rules. They're reporting rumors. And if we then send them some obnoxious note saying, oh, we're not going to give you access to our companies again, they publish that note and we look stupid. And it seemed to be this case where blogging had just outsmarted the PR game. And it was great. And it was great for real reporters, too. Real reporters, listen to me. It was good for us, too, because, it needed some disintermediation in the PR game. I mean, there's a lot of inefficiency that happens with print publications. It takes forever for a piece to come out. I think at the Journal, something like between 6 and 8 editors touch every single piece. There's a lot of points for someone in the PR industry or a CEO of a company to exert leverage and get their voice into the story and really twist what the writer originally wanted to do. And blogging, because it was so immediate and efficient and quick, had totally circumnavigated that. Unfortunately, what's happened now is PR has wound up really controlling a lot of what happens in tech blogging because there's this obsession with size and page views. And I really think this is what's causing a lot of the things that we all, don't like about the blogosphere, whether it's trolls, whether it's link baiting, whether it's just everyone kind of writing about the same story all day long, every day, and we've all had the thing where we go on a tech meme and there's sort of one story that's just dominating the whole front page and everyone just kind of writes to it so it'll drive them more traffic and they don't really have anything new to say. And I think all this is the obsession with size. And because of it, you have bloggers who feel they have to do 12 posts a day and they need material. And if you're sitting at your computer doing 12 posts a day, you're not out meeting with people. You're not out finding those new stories. You're really reliant on people sending you things. Frequently, those are PR people, and frequently they're people who have, an agenda. So, Robert, you're here. You want to weigh in? You're squawking up a little bit.
No, I just noticed that, 4 years ago it was a lot easier to find an interesting story because there wasn't that much competition. I mean, and now the PR people are very adept at really not controlling, because they're not really looking to control you. They're just looking to get their story out. But they'll invite 60 people, 60 bloggers to a press conference, and so everybody gets the same story at the same time, and there's no difference to that story, right? Because I mean, if you're sitting there talking to Mark Zuckerberg with 60 other reporters, what really are you going to find that's going to be different than anybody else in the room, right? So the only way you get to the top of tech meme in that world then is to sensationalize it, right? To put a wacky headline like Facebook is going to kill Google or something like that, right? And because that gets you more links, which gets you more higher up on Facebook. And that's a spiral down because then somebody else will do a more extreme headline, you know, and somebody else then in 5 minutes later will do a more extreme headline because that's the only way you're going to get on tech meme. I don't know, I'm just getting tired of dealing with the PR people, partly because, you know, out of 20 PR people, 2 will be really good, right. one of whom is in this room, actually. And actually 2 of them are in this room that I know of. Yeah. And that tells you a lot, right? Because they're hanging out with the community. But I get stupid email. In fact, I just got a comment on my blog post that I wrote from a PR person who says he's getting bad pitches. So that gives you an idea, you know, how bad it is. I got a folder of like 10,000 emails, most of which are crap and not even aimed at what I write about or care about.
And I think this is the frustration. I mean, as a reporter, you know, when I would go into PR firms and talk to them, I wouldn't say things like, oh, give me a story before someone else, or, you know, give me, you know, scandal and intrigue within a company, or, you know, something that obviously a company isn't going to want to have out there. It's things like spell my name right, know what I'm covering. So, you know, this is not to trash PR people, but, you know, this is an industry where people come out of college and are paid, you know, bill hundreds of dollars an hour to cold call people. And what's exciting about the blogosphere was the degree to which it was breaking that, because people were finding their own stories and making them happen. And if we're all just kind of falling back into this game because we need traffic, we need links, and we need posts, it's kind of becoming more like what the blogosphere was trying to replace. I think another thing, I mean, this all goes back to the idea of size. And blogs started out as these niche, amazing phenomenons. And, you know, the whole question was, will these ever be mainstream? Will they be thought leaders? Will they be places that people have to go to and have to deal with, and can they make money? And amazingly, blogs have proven in a very short time they can do all of those things, absolutely. But the issue is, as they've gotten bigger and bigger, what's happened to community? I think we all know that smaller blogs, Michael Arrington said this recently, Jason Calacanis, again, a lot of the early people with blogging. They've said that as a blog gets bigger, community breaks down. You've got a lot of spammers, you've got a lot of trolls. You're not really having the same interaction that you had in the early days of blogging between the community. So it's 2 questions. 1, is there a way to build a viable business as a blogger, keeping it small and keeping it niche? And 2, does community scale? So I'm going to pause here because this lady had a question.
Yeah, I'm just not really sure I'm understanding what the talk is about. I mean, we talk about this, it seems like every year, especially in the last 3 or 4 years. And I mean, the last thing I think we all talked about is, you know, there's the weblog that I write, which I don't care if anybody reads. I do it for my own personal edification and kicks, which I've actually not done much anymore because of Twitter having that immediate conversational appeal, and the microblogging being a little more immediate. And then I personally don't consider, like, Arrington a blogger. TechCrunch is a money-making website, like Business Week is a money-making magazine. They sell advertising. That's no longer a blog. So I think what's interesting is when you become a news source that sells advertising and that has a following that's substantial enough to where community breaks down, it's not a breakdown in the community, it's you change the nature of your site, which was to become a financial activity.
So is it the monetization that makes it not a blog?
I guess I'm just ready to say, let's just get rid of either the word blog or stop trying to have blog be this like holier than thou, untouchable world. It's journalism now.
So in terms of, I want to pick up on that a little bit more because I think it's a good point. So when you say blogs are journalism, I mean, it sounded like what you were saying at the beginning was that once you're charging money, it's not a blog anymore.
It's not that. I guess it's just everybody's trying to define it and pin it down and say it's this or that, and when it does this, it's not that. And I guess I just look at each one as an individual case. You know, my blog is for me. And other people have blogs that become really, really popular. I think Beth Canner was a good example yesterday. She has a very good purpose to her blog. So to me, maybe the blog is just the activity of posting content to the web. And some blogs are journalism and some aren't, but it's such a loaded word these days. And so I think the talk becomes less interesting for me because everybody's got, my dad used to say, opinions are like assholes, everybody's got one.
Right.
And that's how I feel it is in this space to some extent. And so I don't not like Michael Arrington or Jason Calacanis or what they're doing. I just don't read them because I get my news elsewhere.
But did you before? I mean, a lot of what I'm hearing is that there's kind of been this breakdown, and so I guess I did a bad job of telling you what my talk was going to be about. But that's what I'm trying to address, is this idea that every couple weeks there's another person who's been someone that we've regarded as a blogger that's expressed some disenchantment with it, and readers are expressing disenchantment. So I'm trying to figure out a way together we can get to something more relevant.
I think there's breakdown and there's evolution, and sometimes the people who are uncomfortable with evolution deem it a breakdown.
Okay.
Because if you want to be where maybe the conversation feels more genuine, you should go there rather than sort of railing at the people who've evolved into something that's different than what it originally was. It's kind of like saying, wow, I used to really, I like bands that aren't even around yet. I'm that cool,
Right.
I don't like REM anymore because they're too popular. I mean, it's kind of smacks of that a little bit, I think.
Right. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Beth. I want to just let Jason weigh in here.
Thanks. I guess sort of you're speaking to something that I think has been sort of a problem with the word blog largely from the beginning, is just that I've always considered it the architecture, which is what it really is. A blog is just the way, it's a website, and it's the way it's set up, and the way you use it is what defines it. And we've made the huge mistake of trying to term that blogging. And it's like like you mentioned, TechCrunch is a media company. And they just happen to use a blog architecture to do it. So I think that some of this problem is that we've conflated the idea of sort of we have this blogging activity in our head, and we've put that together with just the system on which we do it. It's like asking, do you paper?
Right.
No.
Although I think it's a good point, but I would note that, I mean, just like, I used to cover software for Business Week, and that used to be a discrete category of businesses. What would you call a software business today? I mean, as technology does evolve and emanate, frequently something is called a certain category, and then, I mean, are there even really internet companies today? I mean, everyone uses the internet in some way for their business. So I think part of that's the newness in the medium, because, I mean, I can say as a journalist, the way you did it did fundamentally change the project. I mean, when I did a cover for Business Week, and it took 6 months to come out and turn into a reality, and went through 1 million editors. But as a journalist, that was the only way for me to reach a large audience. Just the fact of that change in architecture, I think, does have such a profound impact. I mean, I talk to people all the time, who were, frustrated writers or artists or whatever that never had a way to get their words out and their voice out. So I don't know, I mean, is it an architecture? I mean, is it a way of writing? Yes, but when it so fundamentally changes the product?
I guess the one takeaway then is just that I agree with you, but that the term should be different for the architecture and the writing style that it creates.
Okay. Well, good point. Well, we'll come back to you when you have a new term by the end of that'll be your assignment.
I'm not on.
Okay, sure.
All right.
Oh, sorry.
Whoa. Okay. Seriously, let's stop calling it blogs. I mean, content is content. You're a writer, all right? You write, and your stuff is good or it's bad. So TechCrunch has a huge audience because they've been doing it for a while. That's great. That's awesome. But it's about keeping community. I think the future, the evolution of content is keeping an audience. Chris Pirillo can keep an audience for a really long time. Why? Because his content's really good to a bunch of people. So I mean, that's where we need to focus. Stop labeling everything. It's a blog, you're a journalist. You're a blog, you're a journalist. You either write good shit, or you write crap, or you write crap.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
Hopefully I'm in the former category. All right, let's get one more comment and then move to another quadrant.
Okay, I'm Betsy Aoki, and I always have to jump in on these things because I used to be a reporter. I was the SeattleTimes.com first hire, and then I became Microsoft's blog queen, where I got to meet Robert and Beth and all these other people who have been very avid tech bloggers. And the difference that I noticed between blogging and journalism, from my days as a reporter, there was definitely socialization in the newsroom about what was news judgment. You learned it kind of as a rookie. No one could explain it to you really in journalism school. In fact, I skipped journalism school and just went straight to the job because I wanted to figure out what this thing was about writing journalism. When it came to blogging, the thing that became more powerful was suddenly, and this is true I think in a lot of newspaper websites, now the readers are telling the editors what they are interested in terms of the news, what is useful to them. So you're seeing the newspapers and other media outlets getting more reader-friendly because now they have the software that will allow them to talk back and forth between each other. And I think a lot of major newspapers have blogs now. I mean, I haven't really seen a newspaper that doesn't have one at this point. And so when you think about it, blogging as a kind of writing or as a kind of software is changing the way information goes back and forth. And it's very powerful. It's very dangerous in that not all bloggers will do the same research. The court records, the Freedom of Information Act, a lot of stuff that no one has time to do if they have a day job and they're just blogging at night. But I think it's a very powerful thing, and I think the information that goes back and forth will improve because of it.
Yeah, I think that's a key point. And when I was in newsrooms, what we would always hear and people would always talk about is this whole idea of what our readers want. And everyone, all these editors and reporters would sit around in a conference room and go on and on arguing about what our readers want. But you know, every once in a while we would pay someone a lot of money to do some sort of survey and do some research and poll people. But the reality is we didn't know what our readers wanted. Now you know with blogs and even just online, you know, articles, because you can tell by the comments, you can tell by the traffic. But I think getting back to Robert's point about, you know, quality of articles, does that mean we all just write about Apple and Facebook because it drives traffic, or is there some part of that apprenticeship business that you were just referring to, you know, the newspaper world that needs to come in, where it's a, you know, it's a combination of giving people steak for dinner but candy for dessert? All right, I'm going to go over and hit this guy up. All right, I think you've got a microphone coming behind you.
All right, I'm Steve Spalding. I think a lot of times we convolve the web and blogging with the tech blogosphere. A lot of times we convolve technology with only web applications, and I think that really, really limits the way we look at things. Technology is huge. There's so many people writing about so much cool stuff that we don't look at because all we concentrate on is web applications, something with Ajax. It doesn't make any sense to me. And not only that, and you were asking the point, you know, can we monetize X, Y, or Z if we don't write about, you know, Apple every week? There are people out there doing it, and there are people in this room doing it, and I talked to a couple of them earlier this week. It amazes me that we think that all you have to do is get on, you know, the top of tech meme, which really, I mean, as a traffic source, isn't even the greatest thing in the world. There's so many other ways. There's so much other stuff, and I don't get why we concentrate so much on this tiny, tiny segment of such a huge industry.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I argue the same thing in my, you know, role as a reporter in the different places I contract for. I mean, just because it drives a lot of traffic doesn't mean it's the only meaningful thing people want to hear about in technology. Do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I just want to make a real quick comment, which is that I'm really thankful that we have these problems and that there are these kind of controversies and there are these challenges for growing your blogs, because if there weren't, then the big guys would just win, and little guys wouldn't have any advantage, and then that would be really dull. That's it.
I totally agree. So just to, Olivia and Kat are monitoring the chat room, and I just want to make sure we're letting them get in on the conversation here too. So I think they might have a couple questions and discussion points.
Hello. Okay. Hi, Sarah. Well, basically what we've been seeing during the stream is one of the main thematic overarching questions is content-based. So what happens, how do you streamline your ideas and get over the hump, so to speak, once you run out of those ideas?
In terms of content, in terms of posts?
In terms of content and keeping viewership up and readers interested in what you have to say.
Well, and I think this is where we get into easy outs. So whether that's just taking the flood of things that, you know, came in your mailbox, like Robert was talking about, oh, these guys are announcing this tomorrow, that's an instant post, that's a post, that's a post, that's a post, or whether it's what we were just talking about with Apple of, if I write this sort of funny thing, then it'll drive a lot of traffic. I was talking to someone yesterday who said the most traffic post he's ever done was on Borat, and he's a strategist and consultant. I mean, absolutely not tied to his business, but drove a lot of traffic. So, I think for me as a reporter, when the best stories I've ever gotten have been from getting out and talking to people. And that's, why I wanted to do the format this way and get out and talk to people and hear voices, because it doesn't do me any good to tell you guys what I think about blogging. I think there's this growing angst and I want to find a solution for it. And I think the solution is figuring out what people want and what that audience wants beyond just, give me more news about Facebook. I mean, finding out what those other areas of technology are. So just like I'm trying to talk to people to make my blog more relevant, I think every blogger should be out meeting with people and digging up those stories. I mean, to your point, it's not about some new, different thing. It's reporting and journalism in another medium. So just because we can produce these things quickly and do short posts, let's not ignore that there can also be great, solid, traditional reporting that also goes into it.
So we get the behavior we design for. This is it's been said a couple of times. It's a game that's based on some technology that a bunch of people in this room have strong influence over. Why do we get link baiting? Because traffic is how you monetize most of these things. When you monetize it with advertising, you're going to get link baiting. Why do you get trolls? Well, that's how the system was designed. They get rewarded for certain of these things. The way that we change this is by changing the way that we do this. Want to stop link baiting? Easy. Stop monetizing it with advertising. Now, if it's not traffic-based, then you don't get that. The people in this room, the underlying technology is how you solve this. It's the technology that changed the paradigm. I mean, it's what we all loved about it at the first. We can change that again. We just need to think about it and figure out how, instead of kind of going, oh God, right. It's not like the good old days.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And those are the two things that I want to get to next. Monetization and technology. And what are some solutions to make this a medium that we all enjoy more, we're getting more out of, and the writers are getting more out of? I mean, like I said at the beginning, I think sort of some of this frustration and angst is coming from both sides. I think the challenge with blogging, and Beth brought this up earlier, is that it's hard to address in one big swath because bloggers are very individualist by nature. And so I write a blog that's, just sort of about things that, I'm doing in other jobs, mainly about, this intersection of business and technology and culture in Silicon Valley, which is what I've covered for about 10 years. Someone else may do a blog about knitting. Someone else may do, then there's also on the other scale something like TechCrunch that's, a media organization. For me, I mean, to your point, I don't do advertising in my blog for that reason. I consider my blog a loss leader for my business. I do a contract job for Yahoo. I write a column for Business Week. I do speaking gigs. I, do some consulting. I do all of these things, but ultimately my blog is the heart of it, and that's where I bring it all together, and that's what continues to get me work and make me relevant. But I don't directly monetize it because I think I'm getting more of a monetary benefit by keeping the blog pure and writing about what I want to write about and not obsessing over traffic. And then that makes me so much better at these other things that, frankly, I can bill a lot more for. And I think that that's a model that I'm seeing more people go after, because while advertising is constricting, there is a stupid amount of money in this economy for speaking and consulting and other ways to monetize your ideas and your voice once you've utilized this cheap and easy and awesome technology to build one. And I think that would go a long way to solving a lot of this. So Charlene Lee has a thought. She's one of my favorite analysts who is somewhat done the same thing. You've just quit Forrester.
And I think that's, to your point, I've been blogging since 2004. And from the very beginning, I said, this is not about driving traffic, it's about driving influence. And I very clearly defined who my audience was going to be, what I wanted to do, and what to say to them. And from the very beginning, I made a commitment to myself and to my audience. I was not going to overblog. I was only going to blog when I had something to say. And it's really hard work. So there'll be weeks sometimes when I would just go away. I was so busy with work. I just didn't have anything interesting to say. Now, I had to leave my blog behind when I left Forrester, so I'm starting from scratch. And what's amazing to me is that audience has started to follow me still. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't so much a brand Forrester, it was really my thoughts. And the way I monetize it, I've never taken a bit of advertising on it. Probably never will. And it's really about, again, do you want to hear what I have to say? And as long as I stay relevant to my audience, that's the most important thing. It is not about driving traffic, being on A-list. And because of that, I think I've been able to really build a really successful business around it.
Yeah, I have very much the same philosophy behind it. And I think, Charlene's interesting because we've all seen journalists have left and kind of done their own thing and, become sort of standalone journalists, if you will. And we've seen, even like graphic designers, consultants, other parts of the service industry. I really applaud Charlene for being an analyst, which we sort of consider sort of stodgy and organization dependent. And, really having the guts to say, I'm a big enough brand, I want to have a better quality of life. I'm going to just leave and be sort of my own consultant. And I've been on this book tour this summer, and so I've been going to different, cities throughout the country and talking to entrepreneurs and bloggers and creative people who are inspired by the web. And over again, I'm seeing throughout the service economy, people who are quitting their jobs and leaving and doing just that. And it's blogs and social networks that have given them this platform to do it. And most of them, like Charlene, aren't monetizing it through ads. So I think we're selling our voices short if that's the only way we see to monetize our thought leadership. I want to get to you real quick.
I love your point about monetizing, but not with ads. That's what I do with my blog, although I didn't intend to start out that way. I blog at my personal domain, bencurtis.com, about Ruby on Rails, because that's what I do. I do a lot of that kind of work. And what I find is that I get a lot of traffic coming in because of the content that I provide. Here's how you do this, here's how you do that. But then I get people who say, oh, I want something like that, but I don't know how to do it. Let me contact this guy because I have on my thing, I'm available for work, right? And so they call me up and they say, I want you to do this, and by the way, I know you can do it because I've read your blog, so I'm not worried about the technical side. Now it's just a matter of, can I afford you, and do you have the time for me, kind of thing. So that's really neat. And then I get to drive to other projects I do, like Rails Kits, and other projects that I do, and so people just see the quality, and they say, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about, he's an authority, so there may not be 10,000 people reading it, but the people that I care about are reading it, and so that leads to money in other ways.
And you can think of it like, a loss leader for your business the same way advertising, PR, putting an ad in the yellow pages might have been, even, doing some search ads. I mean, I think you're exactly right. And I would bet that you can actually bill more than what a, click-through on your traffic would be, even, times 10.
Hi. All right. So I'm just going to throw some things out there. Throw it out. All right. First of all, I feel this is a really echo chambery conversation we're having, only because, well, okay, if you think about it, every medium, whether it's television, magazines, newspapers, they'll get big and then they'll have their detractors and their fans, right? So if Calacanis stops blogging or Robert, gets disenchanted, that doesn't mean everybody is. Right. And the audiences, I feel like this started based on some disenchantment in the blogosphere. I don't know if that's true. Audiences are at all-time highs. There's great content out there, and I think it's just natural that some people will look at TechCrunch and love it, and others will be like, Arrington sucks, or my blog, or anybody's blog, just because that's how people are. But looking at the knitting blogosphere or the
because the content disappears so quickly. A great post, somebody who, like Charlene Lee, who will put hours and hours into a post and comes through my Google Reader and I see it, right? Right. But we end up arguing about that for 15 minutes and then we're on to the next tech announcement, right? Next week is going to be TechCrunch 50. I know of 5 companies that are really awesome. They're going to get the PR, and there's going to be there's going to be so many other great things that just get ignored. And I see, right now on the top of Tech Meme is this argument about a new iPhone that we haven't even seen. It's not even official. Who cares? But it's at the top of Tech Meme, right? Right. And so there's so many better stories to argue out right now, especially with a new president coming and stuff like that, that aren't getting attended to. The meat of the blogosphere is not getting attended to.
Well, I think. Let me, okay. So, I don't know anybody that I know offline that looks at Tech Meme ever. Like, ever. So, those people are looking at those people are looking at blogs that, that we're not looking at. Like, we're looking at Engadget, we're looking at TechCrunch, we're looking at these blogs that pump out 30 posts a day so that they can just get the audience rather than focusing in on one thing. But the typical person, I think they are finding, because they go to Google, they want to know about whatever company, they'll search for Google, they'll find all those posts. Even if those posts are on page 5 of whatever blog, they're still going to find them. So I don't know that the blogosphere is in trouble, or that there's anything that, even though like some A-listers are disenchanted, I don't think there's really a problem. Well, I'm using the term that they use. I agree with you.
Make your point over again, because I owned a PR agency for 17 years, and I honestly can tell you that the PR people are using the bloggers because the bloggers are letting them. And all you do when you monetize your blog through traffic and ads rather than through what you're talking about, thought leadership, is you encourage the old model to perpetuate itself. The PR people have figured it out. We can get the lazy bloggers just like we could get the lazy journalists.
That's true. It's our spammers from the back of the room. Thank you, thank you. So I think there was some more from the chat room. I just want to make sure we're not ignoring them since they're not the ones physically here. Did you guys have some more thoughts, questions you wanted to jump in?
There's actually quite a lot on Twitter, too.
Oh, well, my friend Twitter, I'm sure.
As you can imagine, both good and bad.
Are you talking about my short skirt again that I'm not wearing? All right, Olivia, yes, go ahead.
Well, I think a major comment that was made was, once you go mainstream, is it even considered a blog anymore?
Anyone want to weigh in? Oh, I saw a hand shoot up like crazy over here from Eric Rice. And we'll jump down to you afterwards. Here, you take mine.
Oh.
Or take
All right. God, people, go read a LiveJournal or a MySpace blog, for Christ's sakes. I mean, Steve brought it up. I think Beth addressed it. Can we stop making the word blogosphere have to do with what the Twitter API does? That's the #1 thing. But what I always find so funny about this conversation about a blog, I just rename all my URLs to get the word out of there. I don't even have comments anymore. Because we sure love it when we're important and we're big. And this whole conversation is still about, but the advertising, the community, what, you can't write online and it's cool? No, it's got to be something. It's got to have an audience. It's got to just do something. We so are turning into what we want to not be like. We're like, oh, you've seen that. Well, they're, yeah, until you start getting all the link love and you're like, well, that's different. And that's the part I think that frustrates me the most. We are the media indeed, and maybe that's becoming the problem that we've been having for generations.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Jeff, let's get you to weigh in here.
Yeah, my question for you is, a lot of this conversation seems to be from people that already have an influential position. Like, you come out of Forrester, or you come out of Business Week, or you're Scoble. But you know what? Most people that are talking and having conversations, and I'm not going to use the word blog because I think these things occur in various channels and various publishing mechanisms. I don't think that it's relevant for people that are just creating content and trying to interact. So my question for you is, why should the average Joe content creator that may be like a Metro blogger care?
Well, I think part of it, and I do get Eric's point about why does it always have to come back to monetization, but I think it's a practical point, because if people want to make a living for doing this, and this is their dream and that's what they love, I'm also in total support of people finding a way to make a living for doing that.
Right, but how many people are actually doing it to make a living?
But how many would want to if they were given the option? Right, but I mean, if we can, and if the web could give everyone a way to publish a novel, I would be all in support of that too. I mean, what I'm saying is I don't think you have to sacrifice content in order to just be this mass portal. I think you can be a blog and make money and be niche and be small.
When
Right.
When I first started coming to Nomex, I was a nobody. When when I first started blogging, I had 0 readers.
Exactly. I mean, the
It's true. Nobody knew me. Nobody knew Mike Arrington before he started publishing his blog. He came out of nowhere. This stuff lets you rise up and take you.
But the conversation perspective is coming from the A-list down, not from the bottom up. Well, I don't think so. I mean,
Can we get away from the tech space for a moment?
Yes. Sorry, I am a tech writer, so that's my perspective.
Okay, so this is my academic rant. I'm taking a page, pun intended, from history. Raise your hand if you think a science fiction thing by Asimov is a novel. Is Asimov a novelist? Okay, is War and Peace a novel? Do we care that they're 2 different genres? No! They're on paper, it's a technology. Blogging is a technology. Content is separate. Jason, good point.
All right. I think this half of the room has not had enough love. Please go ahead.
I just wanted to mention, you know, a lot of you guys that are blogging now, when you very first started, it was something you were passionate about, and that's what got you started. But absolute power corrupts absolutely, and eventually, yes, you start getting search engine optimization in your head, and if I have more comments, I get more traffic, and you can lose sight of what you originally started blogging for. You want to build credibility and, you know, get your audience, maybe, you know, I sell things, I work with people, and I want that perceived value to increase because they find me on Google from a search, virtual assistant, Joomla, what have you. But you build that perceived value, get their attention, get their interest, and then they'll take action and work with you. It doesn't have to be about selling ads or having AdSense on there or anything like that. If you have a particular subject or two that you blog about regularly, and I only blog maybe once a month, right now, about a month ago, I was 100 on Google for virtual assistant. Now I'm in the top 10. And that's from anybody that wants to hire a virtual assistant or be a virtual assistant, they're going to find me. And I have more content, you know, than you could think of, just because that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I believe in.
And I think you're doing that right. I mean, and to, you know, the point earlier about does everyone have to be, you know, a big brand and this whole A-list thing, you know, I don't think that is the case. I think a lot of the people who've become powerful blogging voices came from nowhere. I mean, Scoble Arrington, far more well-known than I am, even though I was a print journalist for 10 years. I don't think it is about coming from a big perch and talking down to people. I think it's about rising up, and you rise up through great content. In the early days of blogging, a lot of these people rose up through great content because it was a new medium and that's all there was. Now that the game has changed, and, you know, I'm sorry, this is somewhat, you know, limited to tech and business because that's what I know, now that the game has changed, it's harder for those new voices to come out without the, you know, the link baiting all around and all of that. And so all I'm trying to do is give people, you know, some different ways of thinking about the ways you can be a blogger professionally. And that's all you do if that's your passion and that's what you want to do. All right, Green Monster, sorry.
So I think one of the big problems that we face is that the people who are clawing and scratching to get into this A-list, whether or not it exists, are doing everything in their power to do that, including fabricate or outright lie.
Hey guys, let's listen. Come on.
And what is happening with this is that this is affecting companies with people who are just making things up about what's going on. It's irresponsible, it's trolling activity, and it's actually damaging to the market as a whole. Now, so ignoring the trolls is going to be an important part of this. Like, we need to find some way to actually say this person knows nothing about what they're talking about. But I will say that the traditional media is occasionally equally guilty of that. Like, each time I see somebody quote Rob Enderle as like the only source on an article, I think that site should lose a page rank point. You need to be aware that that there's a lot of discussion being out there, but the sources are sketchy at best, and educating the reader is going to be as important as figuring out how to monetize things.
Well, I think it's a great point, and I think that that's one reason it's a subject that I'm really passionate about, and it's why when Chris asked me what I wanted to talk about, it was something that I wanted to address, because I do think that there's been too much protectionism over media for a long time, and reporters who do exactly what you're saying, weren't getting challenged, and I think a lot of the bloggers, whether they're small bloggers or big bloggers, have been challenging that, and I think we've seen way more benefit from it than we have negative. I just think we've gotten to a point where it's mainstream, it's accepted, millions of people are blogging, millions of people are reading blogs, millions of dollars are going into blogging. So let's make sure we're staying true to those things, and like someone else said, not becoming what bloggers were trying to displace and shake up in the first place, which I think is what you're talking about. I'm going to take this comment from Alex. I know he's been waiting, but then I want to talk a little bit more before we run out of time about technologies, because I think that there's a technology solution that really needs to be out there to make commenting better. I think part of the problem is it's grown so fast that we don't have good solutions for commenters, and that's part of why we're seeing a lot of trolls and spammers, and that's kind of the other side of what's challenging. So go ahead, Alex.
My name is Alex Dunn. I had a blog that started about 11 years ago for myself and the other people who participated. It was really effective in creating the change in our own lives that we wanted it to create. I get about 3,000 headlines a day through Google Reader. I probably read 100 of them. I think that's probably average usage. I'm not experiencing anxiety and frustration in the blogosphere. I'm just not. A fact of nature is that every system has waste in it. So if you want to call trolls and link baiting waste, it's just something you have to tolerate. I imagine in this room people are experiencing it more because we're just more closely connected to it or more closely exposed to it. But in the ecosystem at large, it's just a fact of nature. As the ecosystem grows, there'll be more waste. And just like anxiety and frustration in your own life, it's just something to accommodate and get used to. I don't know that it's a problem to be addressed. If somebody has like specific metrics or data around anxiety and frustration in the blogosphere, I'm open to learning about it, but I'm not experiencing it myself.
Well, it seems like I've heard some in the audience today other than me. Mariam.
Sarah, I think your job as a reporter is to turn the mirror to us and your subjects and see what's going on. And I think you've done a great job showing this community the tensions that are there, the questions that are there. And I like to know, and I think the rest of us here, what you think that some of the solutions are and where we're heading.
Well, to me, the two biggest things that, maybe don't need to be fixed, but maybe there needs to be an alternative so that the only model isn't building something of the size of scale of TechCrunch or Gawker or, any of the other ones that we would look at, whenever they do those lists of the most valuable blogs or whatever. And I think the two things are monetization and, community. And I think, my answer for monetization is, I think we've ultimately sold a lot of the value of our voice on the cheap by focusing on click-through ads. And so that's not something that I'm doing with my business, and sounds like from a couple other people who weighed in, that's not something that they're doing either. So write what you love about, build a following, make yourself into someone on the A-list if there is a A-list. Don't wait for someone to anoint you. Write really great content and money will follow. You will find a way to make a living being a thought leader. There's so much money out there for that has nothing to do with click-through ads. So that's my first thing. I think, and I would much rather read the blogs of people like that than people who are trying to figure out how to drive traffic. Because trying to figure out how to drive traffic, I'm all for giving readers what they want, but that's not really true journalism, at least as I was trained in it and the kind I like to read. I think the second point is comments, and I do think that I would love to see comments systems maybe fixed a little bit. I think some of the things like video commenting that Seismic has done and some other players are really great because, blogs to me are all about connecting. I mean, as a reporter, I want to connect with audience, and there are people that will come to my blog and leave comments every day, and I feel like I know them, but I know them as just the screen name. So I would love to be able to physically see them more. There's so much that's telegraphed over video that we don't just see in a regular comment. And I think it cuts down on some of the abuse as well. I think, another potentially interesting thing is if we can have more identity portability between social networks so that your Twitter ID is then seamless on my blog or your Facebook identity and the whole community around you is also transported across the web everywhere, then that brings in sort of the real world social pressure and connections and conversations. So that's not even about what's happening on that blog, it's about something much greater. And I know I'm stealing this from Charlene Lee. She's talked about how social networks need to at some point become air. And it's just something that's all around us and we take it wherever we go. And if those two things could happen in the blogosphere, I think I'd be a lot more excited about it, engaged, and read a lot more awesome stuff. I'm really lucky that I fell into a career where I can be a writer and I can go around and talk to fascinating people and write about the things that I see. And, I know a lot of people would like to have a career like that. And I think it's out there, and I think it's up for people to grab it. So that's my thought. We want to get like a last word from anyone? We've got to be running out of time. Good God. All right. There's lots of waving over here.
Like several threads behind,
okay,
because it was going pretty fast, but it was kind of building on what Charlene was talking about, I guess, is the indirect or the intangible.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't measure love, but or I can't necessarily measure learning. I mean, I started blogging early on before there was blogging software. I did it when I was hand coding HTML and writing, and I just started to write because I wanted to learn. I wanted to deepen my expertise because I was a trainer. I was teaching other people, and I just kept it for myself. And then somebody told me about Six Apart or whatever, and I started a blog, and I didn't even know about comments. And then people started to find it. And I said, wow, this is kind of cool. Oh, someone else is reading this. And I just got into conversations with people. I know everybody who comments. Like, they're my community. I know them. I'm out. I'm training. When I get questions when I'm training people, that's what I write about for the blog. And that has brought me work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's helped me raise money for good causes. So I don't feel anxiety, burnout, or that at all. I feel really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but what I think is great.
I feel good.
What I love about your comment, and I think we've obviously had a couple realities in this room today. There have been some people that have clearly expressed some anguish, and there have been some people who've said, what are you talking about? And frequently the people who've said, what are you talking about, are people who are doing exactly what we're talking about, and doing it the right way and writing about what they love, and like letting everything else follow. And the readers who aren't expressing frustration are doing the legwork to educate themselves and find new sources for information. So I think these two sort of sides of the argument are actually closer together than it may seem like. So maybe people like me or some of the Valley people of our little echo chamber who feel like there's frustration can walk away from this session and really have learned something from you guys about the way we should even be attacking it. So I thank everyone for that. And with that, we should probably wrap up. This was like sort of an experimental keynote for me and a little bit scary to just come up and let everyone have a voice. So I learned a lot from it, and I absolutely loved it. It was more entertaining for me than just standing on stage and talking for an hour, and certainly better than preparing any PowerPoint slides. So I hope you guys got something out of it too, and I hope to hang out with more of you through the rest of the day. Thanks.